All right, what's up, everybody? Nick Peppard here with the Make Do Suburban Fireman podcast, episode 41. I am Seanless today. Unfortunately, he has got some family obligations, so I'm going to be soloing it with my good buddy JD Ducharme. JD's just a little bit south of me here in Wisconsin, so good to have him on the show today, dude.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, I think so. This is kind of fun because I don't usually get to do true like sitting at the table talking like this podcast very often. Usually it's remote, so not doing it Zoom format is kind of nice.
Just had some random guy show up at your house.
Yeah, so we've been shooting the shit here for a little bit before the podcast. I'm already pumped up. I'm on my like fourth cup of coffee.
We're ready.
So this is gonna be a good episode. But yeah, man, let's start with your background as far as where you started. Maybe back us up before the fire service and then kind of what got you into being a fireman and kind of your career journey and progression to where you're at now.
Yeah, so I come up from a whole family of cops, so I'll admit that right now.
I'm sorry.
Law enforcement is my entire family, grandpa, dad, brother, and that was going to be my pathway as well. So I went to UW-Whitewater, got a bachelor's degree there, and somebody said I was smart from the government, so I actually went into the federal service as a special agent for 6 years and did national security investigations. So completely whole different realm. Then 2013, got out of that after 6 years on the dot, and I was trying to find what I was going to do and still enjoy. Politics were extremely heavy at that point in that line of work, and I had a brother-in-law that was full-time down in Janesville Fire, which is down in south central Wisconsin. He just goes, "Man, I think you'd really like the fire service." So kind of talked to some other people, and everybody loved their job, and I was like, "Well, that's really rare. Like everybody really likes doing this." So, and it wasn't going to keep me behind a desk. I was going to still be able to be out and about, and I was like, "This might be a really good choice." So, 2013, I entered into the fire service, and it kind of went hand in hand. I did a lot of talking to people in my Fed job, and I was able to use those skills again because we're trying to solve problems all the time, really, fire ground or unfortunately EMS too. But we're asking a lot of questions. We're seeing what's in front of us to try and make decisions. And it ended up kind of flowing with what I had done in my previous life, and started down in southern Wisconsin, moved around a couple of places, was full-time up in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, and then went to Oshkosh, and now I'm at a department down in southeast Wisconsin, which is actually where I'm living, which is awesome. And I just got promoted there as lieutenant, and I've been taking that on. So it's been an absolute journey and a blast, but
bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But found my place, and I'm pretty excited about it. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. And obviously, I've been up here in Wisconsin for a little over a year and a half. Kind of met you and knew you through social media, kind of casually. The Fools chapter down there, Brew City, was a part of kind of our getting to know each other, and always been impressed with your attitude and work ethic, man. Like always, really just it's awesome and refreshing to see guys. Anytime I get a chance to hang out with guys that are into the job, that get it, that I don't have to put my muzzle on. I can just be a fireman. It's kindred spirits. Yeah. It's that. And anybody who's listening to this, man, if you've never been to like a fire conference, a Fools training, something like that, you're missing out, because I'm telling you right now, it is amazing when you go to some of these trainings and these events and you meet hundreds of other people that are equally as ate up and passionate and love the job the way you do. Man, it is such a shot in the arm. And I think, like, I always tell people, go to at least one or two a year.
Have to
get outside your bubble, look at the big picture, network, meet people in the fire service. Because I'm telling you right now, man, like the fact that I look at my career and all the cool people I've got to cross paths with and work with, and it's been because I got out of my comfort zone and challenged myself to get around people that are going to push me to be better. Yeah. So yeah, that's dude. I think that obviously I'm bummed you're not working at OFD with me anymore, but you're in a great spot there as a lieutenant, man, and getting to really be part of building an awesome department culture, and definitely close to home, which is even better.
Yes,
so
it's great backyard.
Yeah.
It's been a blessing. But like you said, that hard reset, you need conferences. You tend to find the people that you need at that moment, I think, in your career or even in just the day-to-day you can be so burnt out from things happening at home, and you go to a conference somewhere and meet a group of guys. And, I'm gonna point them out right now. I got my Buffalo boys out there from Wichita and Southern Illinois and stuff. And I mean, we're going around to conferences together all the time now. And we're just this little group of dudes that absolutely love this job, love it. And we have an absolute blast. Yeah. And that group just keeps getting bigger because we keep meeting good, cool people elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it's a blast.
Yeah, no, it really is, man. Like I said, one of those things that I think, like anything in life, if you want to be the best version of yourself, you have to surround yourself with people who are going to bring that out of you, right? And it's easy to get, in the mundane day-to-day stuff, you get bogged down and focus on the negative stuff. It's easy to get hyper focused on the negative. If you don't ever take a step back and look at the big picture and get out and talk to other people. And you realize, here's the thing. You realize when you talk to other people that a lot of people are fighting the same battles.
All over.
It's your situation is not unique in most cases, and that's the beauty of what I love about social media, what I love about, all the conferences that are popping up everywhere, because, when we first got on the job, other than the big shows, FDIC, Firehouse Expo, some of the bigger, shows, there wasn't a lot of this stuff going on that's going on nowadays. And I had this conversation with Zach Bruin the other day, how that it's such an amazing thing where now you can throw a rock in a map, anywhere in the United States with any given weekend, you can find something somewhere within 300-400 miles of where you live. And, that to me is remarkable.
Yes.
And what it's done is, in a lot of ways, it's, I think, almost become there's been this almost renaissance and rallying cry of firemanship in the country.
Yeah.
And it's been because of all these conferences popping up. It's been because of all these podcasts and networking. And a lot of that is due in part to the internet and social media, because now the exposure is out there.
Yes.
You can see outside of your four walls, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So, you did an opening segment at the first ever Salt City Fire Expo back in April. And it's called Why Are We Here?
Yeah.
And I really, to me, like, I wish you could have had more time, honestly, because you were on a roll. And really, I mean, it was such a very poignant, question. Mm-hmm. And it was a very, kind of a look at yourself in the mirror and do some self-inventory on why you exist as a firefighter. And so I want to talk about that in a minute. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about your class, but I want to talk about, more importantly, the concept behind the class.
Yeah, for sure. The Why We Are Here concept came through because, going through interviews or talking to people coming in the fire service, you always heard the answer, I came into this because I wanted to help people. And everybody's initial thought is, yeah, that's great. We all want to help people. And I got thinking about it. I was like, man, that's kind of a cop-out answer. And it's a weird way to spin it, because you absolutely want people that are there to help and be the helpers. But I really got thinking about it. I was like, I got into this because I wanted to be the best. And I wanted to be the best, knowing I'm never going to be the best, period. Yeah. But I want to have that mindset of, I want to be the best fireman I can possibly be. Mm-hmm. And what I kind of boil it down to is, it's Aaron Rodgers coming and saying he wanted to play football to throw football. It comes with the territory, right? Mm-hmm. Aaron Rodgers played football because he wanted to be the best quarterback in the NFL. He became a professional to be the best quarterback in the NFL and set records and do things like that. And some people may say that's ego, but I really don't think that's the case. I mean, we're dealing with life and death here. And the statement's always made of, would you want to be the fireman going to save your family? We got to take that seriously. So it was kind of viewing that mindset of getting rid of the naysayers that say, seconds don't count. Why are you doing masked ups out in the bay? You're just saving 10 seconds. Well, we took that and then put that into the medical realm, which Nick Ledeen and all those other guys do too. It's a great perspective, but we have guys at the firehouse that will absolutely pound you for getting off the chest for 10 seconds in CPR. Well, that's their chain of survival. 10 seconds matters. You got to make sure. Well, why is it any different in the fire ground? Firefighter rescue survey has shown us 6 to 8 minutes, you got to get that victim out of the building. And if you don't do that, their survival just plummets. So if I can save, we're not a single show pony here. We got to stretch line. We got to throw ladders. We got to mask up. We got to force doors. If in all those 6, 7 elements before you even get into the building, you can save, 10, 20 seconds a piece. You're talking 1, 2 minutes you can save for that victim. Mm-hmm. And the way I put it is that's our transfer time. There are not many, jobs in this world besides firemen and policemen where time we save is transferred to a victim or transferred to somebody else, but we have it.
Yeah.
We are not God, but we have the ability to save time and give that back to these victims to survive. And it was just one of those realizations, I had one day talking to other guys that we talked about at conferences that were super passionate. They were like, man, what a gift we have to be able to do that. And what a sad state of affairs it would be if we don't train to save that time for them. Because I know if my daughter is trapped in a building, I'd want to be saving every possible second I could to get in there. So it's just that stark realization. And, going along with that, I had John Chapman in that presentation, and he's just an absolute idol of mine. And he was an Air Force combat tac controller. And this guy spent his entire career training, his entire career. He started in the 80s in the Air Force. These CCTs were a little newer, extremely difficult pipeline, similar to the fail rate of SEALs through BUDS. And then he gets out and the Gulf War comes around and he's like, man, I did this 6 years of training now. I'm ready to go. And he gets hurt and he doesn't get to go. And, then the 90s, there's not much going on. He's sitting there trying to figure out what he's doing with his life. He meets a woman. They start having kids. Then 9/11 happens right when he's about to get out. Yeah. And he had taken a job that was more pre-deploy stuff, wasn't direct action. And then he's just sitting there begging. He's like, I have trained to do this. And all my friends are sending me stories now about chasing bin Laden through, the mountains of Afghanistan. I want to be there. And he pretty much jumped up on the desk of his commander and said, you're sending me over here. Like, I've trained now for 17 years. Like, I'm going. And he did. And, then March 4th, 2002, he's, a steel fell out of the back of a helicopter on Taker Gar in Afghanistan. And he was sent to the team to go back and try and get him. And the minute they sat down on top of that mountain, they came through just absolutely withering fire. And this guy who had never been tested in combat ever in his entire life charges straight up the mountain into these 2 machine gun nests, 2 bunkers, as the SEAL team started kind of going back down the mountain to try and regroup. And him and Slavinsky, the SEAL team leader, they both started charging up the mountain with Slab right behind Chapman. And he charged that thing and ended up getting shot. The SEALs thought he was dead, so they left him and got off the mountain. And then another helicopter came in to try and recover them. And right before that helicopter lands, he gets up again and starts charging the bunker after he'd been shot multiple times and ended up saving the lives of 23 people. And I was just like, what a stark example right there. He's in the Air Force for 17 years, tens of thousands of hours of training, never gets tested. And he's in combat for just over 70 minutes and saves 23 lives.
Yeah.
That is the epitome of what training means right there. Yeah. He did exactly what he needed to be. He had never been tested in his life, but he had trained so much and he had such confidence in his abilities and skills that he just went for it. And he knew that if he didn't do that, everybody was dead.
Yeah.
And he won the Medal of Honor for it, and much deserved. But I feel like, we're not on a death wish, but we have to have that mindset of every day we're training for the worst day of our life. Every day we're training for somebody else's worst day of their life. And we have to be able to perform.
Yeah, that story, and I'll say this. If you have never read the book Alone at Dawn,
yes, outstanding.
Do yourself a favor, pick the book up, get the audiobook, something. Go listen to it, go read it, because it's all true story.
Yeah.
It's not fluffed and infatuated. It really is. It's just, here's a dude that literally laid it all on the line, literally 100% gave his life to save his brothers in combat. And I think, like, when you look at the selfless acts that he did that day, when you look at the mission mindset that he, everything was leading up to that point of just training. And I think, like, how, you say, how does that translate to the fire service?
Yeah.
Well, guys, how many times, I can tell you, man, early in my career, I had guys, you probably never make a rescue in your entire career. Guess what? In 2012, I did.
That's right.
Guess, I hear guys all the time like, you'll never have to do that, or we'll never, the chances of you having to use all that RIT stuff or that Mayday stuff, guess what? It happens.
Yes.
And the thing is, I think that's where, like, to me, we almost get lulled into this, 90% of the time it goes, no, there's not any issues, or even 99% of the time, or whatever. And we start making excuses for easing off on our preparation, our training, our mindset. Like, it's not, it's just a fire alarm. I don't need to put my gear on, hey, we've been to this apartment complex for fires before, and it's a one-line fire and it's done, or I've searched 100 times before and never found anybody. Like, I'm probably not going to find me. And like, we start telling ourselves these lies.
Yeah.
And as a service, like, some of us start believing that stuff. Like, we start telling new guys this stuff and they start believing it.
Yeah. Well, that's never going to happen here, right?
Right.
The guy that says that'll never happen here for 500, Alex, it's not going to happen. They're all over the place. And I had this one slide I just brought up as we were talking in my little presentation there. And this one really hit home. And, it was the trigger warning of not everyone goes home. It's a statement we have in the fire service. Everyone goes home. That's not true. And unfortunately, usually it's the guys that you want to come home because they're the studs. And they're going to be the ones that you want training everybody else. But what it says is, and sometimes against all odds, against all hope, we still hope. And I crossed out still hope, and I put we are the hope. Because as firemen, as police officers, to these people, we're it.
Yeah.
We are the hope. We are their hope. They are hoping we're going to do our job. They're hoping we're the best trained individuals that are coming to save them. And they're hoping we're going to succeed. And at the same token, when people are out there videotaping us on the front yard, watching everybody, Tank to Pump Frank and all these other guys, when they're saying, man, I hope everybody's okay, what they're saying is they're hoping the fire department does their job. They're hoping that everybody that just showed up on scene on their camera is going to do exactly what they're supposed to do to save those people. So it just hit really hard where I'm like, against all odds, we still hope. We're it. We are it.
Yeah.
We are the hope. And we have to take that seriously.
Yeah. There's nobody else coming, right? When the house is on fire, and I have this conversation a lot because I think that the fire service, we've taken a lot of hats and we do a lot of things. And there's nothing wrong. Like, we serve our communities, and I'm 100% like, I know there's some guys like, we shouldn't do EMS. Like, listen, I get it's 80% of what we do. I also know that we do make an impact in people's lives.
Absolutely.
However, if we stop doing EMS tomorrow, there'd be a company in here doing it like that.
No problem, right?
If we stop doing hazmat, somebody else would do it. If we stop doing dive, the sheriff's office or somebody else would do it. Like, all around the country. And here's the thing: civilian inspectors, fire inspectors.
Oh, for sure.
You can teach a civilian to do fire inspection. And I'm not downgrading or downplaying the importance of fire prevention, education, EMS, hazmat, special ops, ARF, whatever it is, that we do. I think we have done a really good job as a service of providing great value to our communities.
Absolutely.
But at the core of who we are firemen first. We are still the fire department, and the cops aren't going to go in there and put the fire out. EMS is not going to go put the fire out.
Cops are going to try.
They're going to try. They're going to try.
Sometimes they do, and it takes us off, right?
It does. But I'm just, when it's ripping and roaring though, and it's like, getting after it, man. Like, and people are trapped. Like, the one job that everybody in the public expects us to do and to do well is to be firefighters. But yet, I feel like culturally, a lot of fire departments have kind of forgotten why we are here.
And that's a great point. But they've forgotten it because they can hide behind something. And this is a point that I like to talk to guys about all the time, because we are now as a culture able to hide behind the statement, high heat, low visibility. All right. And I'm just going to state as a blanket statement. I guarantee you a lot of people out there are going to relate to this. Our fire departments at any point, if things don't go well, can put in their press release, we experience high heat, low visibility.
Yeah.
No problem. Hands clean, right? And all the public's going to go, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. Well, we've gotten really good at an incipient fire being high heat, low visibility because we didn't do our job.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's pathetic. I think that's something that absolutely has to change. we got to be realistic. We got to be realistic with one, our expectations of ourselves, and we got to align the expectations of the community to what we're truly doing. All right, and not exaggerate it. Like if we're doing our job well, God bless it, we are, and we're good at it. We can't hide behind the high heat, low visibility statement that we can put out there all the time and get this reprieve. We have to own it. You have to go out there and do your job and show that you're capable, and not hide behind this little statement. So I think that's a dangerous place a lot of people are going with, in the age of social media, like you said, of it being a blessing. We can also do a little CYA with our own department because they weren't trained well. And I don't like that. I don't think anybody that's really passionate would like that. But when you're looking at Domino's pizza drivers being willing to go and pull 5 kids out of a building when he's going to deliver a pizza, and some guys are not willing to go into a building, there's a problem. And, like the example I brought up in Sawdust was a local example, and it had nothing to do with the fire department on this one. It was all about that young lady's desire. But little 11-year-old Natalie that, she was left home alone as her parents would do a Bible study. Her house started on fire, and then her siblings were stuck in the building. She got out, was out on the front yard, and nobody else came out. So she went back in there to try and save her brother and sister and died for it.
Yeah.
And she, like I said in there, she had never been able to go to fire academy and figure out if she's brave. She never got to go trying out all this cool equipment and turn out gear and feel what heat felt like. She never got to try and go do a search of her room. She just went in there because she loved her brother and sister and paid the ultimate sacrifice for it. And she was 11.
Yeah.
We have to have that same love for the people we're serving, period.
Yeah.
And I hope that's the attitude everybody's going into this job with,
I think that there's a lot of folks, I think, that start with that mindset. Get that almost kind of beat out of them. By people who don't want to train, by people who, and I want to throw this out there, man. There's a lot of folks that like the benefits of being a firefighter. They like the schedule, the time off, pension, things like that. But they've gotten comfortable and have allowed to get comfortable. And that's the thing culturally in a lot of fire departments where the fringe benefits are more important than the mission. And what that translates into is, you have these blanket policies about, or this almost cultural policy of, basically looking for reasons not to go in the building instead of reasons to go in the building. The hit it hard from the yard mindset. And don't get me wrong, is there a time for exterior water? 100%. But there are whole cultural shifts in across the country. Departments like, oh, we're going to spray it from outside, and you'll see video after video on YouTube of departments for minutes spraying on what should be a couple rooms on fire. Go put it out. Go search for victims, and then it ends up getting worse a lot of times because they're not hitting the fire, et cetera, et cetera. So those blanket shifts, the blanket, the blanket mindset of, well, everyone goes home, and if they don't, it's unacceptable. While the Everyone Goes Home program has done some amazing things for fire service.
Absolutely has.
Please don't misunderstand. People listen to this, but I think it's been bastardized and turned into this mindset of like zero-sum game where if we lose anybody ever, we have failed. And the thing is, I just simply don't believe that's true.
Well, and we talked about that too. I mean, that was another part of that presentation is, I got to work with some absolutely amazing people, some of the best assaulters in the military, and they were doing the cool work, and, we had a conversation one day, and this guy had been in the military for over 20 years, probably was legitimately one of the best assaulters in special forces, period. And he just said, you can't go with this attitude of you're never going to die, because guess what? And he said this, I'm probably one of the best assaulters in the military, hands down. I've been deployed over a dozen times to all these places with direct action combat missions in every single one. And I've done all this training, but someday I might step through the door and some guy in a man dress is going to just spray and pray and hit me in the head.
Yeah.
It might happen.
Yeah.
And you can't prevent that.
Right.
Was it because he was poorly trained? Absolutely not. Some guy got lucky. Sometimes the fire is going to get lucky. Sometimes it's going to win. But you can't go into everything thinking that way.
Right.
It's just impossible. You wouldn't be able to function that way.
No, you can't do your job if you're constantly afraid of what might happen.
Absolutely.
And I think like that's the takeaway is, you know, there are unfortunately those who have tried to sterilize this job
Yes.
and make it white collar, and the fact of the matter is it never has been and it never will be. It takes men and women who are willing to put in the work, train hard, go and execute, just like our military counterparts, just like our law enforcement counterparts, just like people like athletics, right? They love sports teams. You brought up Aaron Rodgers, right? The thing is, like, to perform at that level, you gotta put in the work.
Absolutely.
And that is the shortcut. Like Aaron Field says, work is the shortcut. And the bottom line is, like I said, you have to understand, like, you actually are safer if you're training and you're studying and you're preparing and you're working out and you're eating right and you're wearing all your PPE. Like, you are actually safer in that high stress environment, that high impact environment, than the guy who doesn't put the work in, who does the bare minimum, who's always looking for ways out, and then all of a sudden they're faced with a situation where they have to act, and now they got to go perform at a high level. That's not how it works. If you're not performing and training to perform at a high level, you're not going to magically snap your fingers at 2 a.m. and go kick ass.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't work that way.
We can't be in the measurement of liability business, and we just got to be ready to do our job, period. And that's the hard part, is we talked about it earlier before we started. It's the extremes we have right now. It's like, you can't find this middle ground. We have to be on one end of the spectrum, the other, and
you got to either have a suicide mission or completely risk person. I'm not doing anything.
That's right. I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but I mean, it's like one of those things where, like, you're either in this culture of, like, we're not going to train because somebody might get hurt when we're training,
right?
And that's a workman's comp issue, and we're going to get clean caps because we don't want anybody to get cancer, and we want to do all this, and they can't shift anywhere over towards that middle ground of
right.
And then you're just sitting there looking at them going, you do understand that you're going to have less injuries and less issues like that if you teach your guys to just be extremely smart and make good decisions and go out there and train all the time, and it's going to become second nature to them. That's going to result in a safer culture than it is if you keep on trying to pad everything, because we have to do our job. We have to train to do our job to be successful at it. And we witnessed something this last 2 weeks down at the department I am. I absolutely love the opportunity to train with people down there, especially young individuals who are a little less confident with skills, because they kind of came into it and you would see some of them kind of like trying to half something, and you're like, here's the deal, man. Nothing on the fire gun is meant to be babied and be treated kindly. You got to beat the shit out of it. Albeit ladders, forcing doors, whatever it is, you got to go all in on it, or that's where you're going to fail, is if you're going halvesies. And then all of a sudden they kick it up to that notch and they're being extremely successful. And then all of a sudden it clicks and I'm like, holy crap, if I go full bore at this, I feel confident. I relate it to like going to an interview in a suit and you never wear them. And you're like, man, I feel really good today. I'm going to do really great things. And not Step Brothers style. I mean, you can do that too. But
we should have worn tuxedos.
Absolutely. Tuxedo t-shirts.
Did we just become best friends?
Became best friends. But if you go into it like 100% with that mentality, I'm going to kick the shit out of this door, or I'm going to make this happen, you do a lot better. And these light bulbs just clicked in all these folks. I was like, man, this is awesome. It was just an awesome thing to witness, that the more they went through repetition and the better they got at the skill, you could literally just see them pick themselves up and be like, I can do this. I can absolutely do this and do this really well. And, that's all we're looking for. And, that's where I find I'm extremely lucky right now. I get to work with a lot of really young folks that have an extreme passion for the job and want to do this. And we get to have fun every day.
Dude, what is I'm trying to remember the quote from General Patton about basically a violent plan enacted. Like, now is better than the perfect plan, or a good plan acted on violently now is better than the perfect plan a week from now. Something I'm paraphrasing, but that's the point is, like, you want to train to build confidence, so that when you do execute, it may not be the absolute perfect plan, but you've trained enough to a lot of times it is successful because you just execute. And go ahead.
Well, I always say this, like, we have to be an idealistic mind in the fire service with realistic violence. And what that means is, like, we have to have the idealism of we are, it's this thing of we're here to help people. We're here to be the best. We're here to do all that. We have to act violently. We have to have this realistic expectation of violence in our job, because we don't do things that are soft. What we do is violent. It's violent in nature, right? It is the same as the battlefield. We have a battlefield that we go up and walk on when we go to the fire ground, and we have to view it that way. And when you go with the expectation of violence, when you go someplace and all of a sudden people get into a fight, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of it, you're not prepared. You're not in that mindset. It's not the greatest place to be. That's when you hope you got Mongo behind you, 6'5", at least a skinny guy like I do. But if you're preparing for a boxing match all the time, you're preparing for your MMA fight, and you go into the ring with that mindset, I got to kick some ass today. I got to be extremely violent. It makes everything that you need to do just come naturally. You're in that mindset. You're ready to go. Yeah. So we can't dial people back into just being an idealistic person of, well, I hope we can do this. And if the perfect plan happens, this is going to be a great thing. Right. You have to train them to just execute and be absolutely violent in their expectations. And it's scary to some people to talk that way, but it's just the fact. It's a realistic fact of our job.
It's purposeful, measured aggression.
Yes.
Right. It is, one of those things where, we don't want to just be blind aggression, right? But we want people to, here's the thing. I'll back this up. If you, and I think you'll probably agree with this, all that, you're planning and getting the perfect plan and, the soft skills in the firehouse, like that's all well and good in the soft environment.
Absolutely.
But when it comes time to get on the fire ground to go to battle, you need warriors, not guys, not pencil pushers. You need people that are willing to be violent, to go get after it, right? And to execute. And it's no different. Like I said, whatever we want to compare ourselves, we want to talk about being tactical athletes and all this stuff. Yeah. Well, do we really take that serious? Because guess what? When they go out on the football field, they're expected to do what? To execute with a purpose. Yeah. To be exactly where they need to be. Don't pussyfoot around. Yeah. Get after it. And go execute the plan. Yeah. And the same thing in the military, right? If they pay, patty cakes with the enemy, they're going to end up dead. Right.
That's exactly it.
You got to go in with the mindset of like, hey, I'm going to dominate this thing. Like we're, as a team, we're going to go in here and kick ass, take names. And like, and if you go in already looking for reasons that you're going to lose, then you're going to lose.
Yeah. I think, a lucky thing that both of us have experienced is we've been on different size departments.
Yep.
Right? So both of us have been on small full-time departments where you can't hide. You cannot hide. You have to be expected to do your job because maybe you're only showing up with 5 to 8 people for the first 10, 20 minutes.
Yep.
You have no sidewalk shepherds there sitting and leaning on their New Yorkers because they can't. Everybody gets a job and everybody has to do something. Then we've been on the opposite end of the spectrum where you're a large department where you're going to get 28 or 35 people there in the first 10 minutes. And you got plenty of guys that can sit there and hide in the background and never have to do a thing. Yeah. Literally never have to do a thing. And that's their comfort zone.
Yeah.
But to have the advantage of being able to be on a small department, and I always think it's funny when you get a lot of the big city guys that are like, oh, what are they doing over there? And they're like, small, maybe 20, 30 guys full time on the department. And those guys can kick some ass because they're going through 2 or 3 bottles before they're even going to stop working because they have to.
Yeah.
As opposed to having like, all right, what do you want me to do, Chief? There's no time for that. They have no conversation. They have no ability to talk because it's just like, all right, guys, we're hitting the ground running for the first 5 minutes. We're not talking because we have a job to do. And I see the preparation in those departments, and it can be extremely good. And it's a great opportunity to learn. So
I some of the best firemen I know work shorthanded.
Absolutely.
Work in departments that don't have a lot of money, don't have a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they're forced to learn how to force multiply. They're forced
to. Have to.
And I love it because it's like that's how, to me, we should be planning, every single day is how can I execute, the most effectively, the most efficiently, what's going to give me the results I need as quickly as possible. Because it isn't, listen, if you don't think we're racing the clock, we absolutely are.
Oh, yeah.
We are racing the clock from the minute the bell rings. The fire's already burning, right? People are already, they're in there without PPE in a smoke-filled environment, hoping and praying that the fire department shows up ready to go to work. Yes. And for people that, and I'll say this is why I'm not a fan of the clean cap. Because I think when we show up, people expect us to go to work, and you can't get off the rig and go to work if you still got to put your stuff on. No. And that's just my disclaimer. I know a lot of guys on both sides of the fence. I'm not throwing rocks. I understand the purpose behind it, but I think there are better ways to still reduce cancer exposure while not affecting and negatively impacting our mission.
Well, I mean, it's just like Bo Davis and Clyde. They came up to Wisconsin in June, and Clyde put it the best way possible because everybody just loves him, and Chief's an outstanding guy. But he just goes, If somebody shows up to my fire and for my family and steps off the truck trying to put their SCB on in a clean cab, he goes, I'm gonna kick their ass. And it's like, well said, but it's that mindset. Now they're not coming off ready to fight. They're coming off now having to think. You got to think about how much information your brain has to process the minute you get off the fire truck. Like you got to look up and just be like, all right, what am I seeing? What do I got to do? What am I reading right now? And if I'm sitting there going, well, I got to put my SDB on first and I got to get all ready to go. You are not in it.
You're not looking at it. You're not looking at the game.
Big picture.
No.
So I think that's my biggest thing with it is, I want to come off the truck ready to fight. Absolutely. But the other side is I want my brain to be able to focus on what's in front of me and not have to focus on this other thing, which should be natural, but you're still thinking, all right, I gotta get off. I got to open open the compartment, get my SCBA on, get all set up and get ready to go. I want to think nothing of that.
Yeah.
When I have a building ripping in front of me, that's not what I want to be focused on.
Well, your eyes need to be on the battlefield.
Absolutely. Eyes on the prize, right?
Yeah, no, dude, it's, let's put it in context a little bit, right? So the equivalency of our profession with, getting our stuff on scene. Yep. Okay. Let's say the cops get called for an active shooter, right? Guys running up and down the streets, blasting away. Yeah. That's their equivalent of a ripping house fire with people trapped, right? There's people pinned down. There's this guy shooting people, right? And they show up and say, shit, hold on. I got to put my bulletproof vest on, my tactical helmet, get all my stuff. Like that's asinine.
Well, the cops, they train him to threat. That's their job. So back in the day, they used to have a shotgun in their car, mounted right next to them. Mm-hmm. Then they'd usually have their patrol rifle in the trunk because it wasn't used as often, right?
Right.
Where do you see their patrol rifles now? Right next to them.
Because when it's go time,
they're going to get off that. They're going to get out of their squad car with that thing ready to go. Yeah. And all they're going to do is listen for gunshots to go kill that son of a bitch. Yeah. Period.
Yep.
And maybe we'll take a lesson from the cops. I hate saying that. But sorry, Dad. But honestly, right? They're going to come off ready to go.
Sure.
And as we've seen in some of the recent school shooters, they're doing a damn good job, right?
Yeah.
They're going for it 100%.
Yeah.
They are going through that complete uncertainty of where this person is in a huge building, but they're gunning for them.
Yeah.
All right. And they're knocking the threat off right away. We got to think the same way.
Yeah.
All right. Our threat is the fire. Our threat is that toxicity impinging on victims, and we got to address it immediately. To think anything else is we're just not doing our job if that's the case.
Well, that's, again, like I said, it's just silly to me that we justify these things, right? We justify, I read something, I think yesterday, the day before, basically, if you're having to put your gloves on at the front door, that you're wasting someone else's time. And the whole premise behind it was like, look, we should be able to be proficient enough to come off ready to go to work, throw our mask on with our gloves on so that we can immediately engage the enemy. And like I said, from the cop context, go to the military. If they show up on the battlefield and say, hold on, we're not ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's going to happen, right? And
time out.
Hey, guys, hold on. We got to get our tanks in position here. And I just, that's the mind numbingness to me. It's not just clean cap. It's how we load our hoses. It's how we load our ladders. It's our life-saving equipment. Yeah. I worked in a firehouse one time, and thank God it changed. But when I first got there, the ladder company, okay, they had their ground ladders in the back of the rig, like most ladders do, right? They come off the back. But in the ladder compartment, they had shoved so many shovels and brooms that you had to pull 7 or 8 of these things out to get to the ground ladders that you needed. I'm like, guys, why are we blocking the life-saving equipment with shovels and brooms are great and they're useful, but not when you're saving lives.
Oh yeah.
And it was just one of those things like how you set your rig up and all these things compound, right? In seconds add up to minutes and it translates on the fire ground. And the thing about it is again, it's one of those things where you got to ask yourself, are we truly the professionals we claim to be? When we go to the citizens and say we're doing all this, stuff on their behalf, are we really doing what's best for them, or are we doing what's best for us?
Absolutely, and that's something you got to reflect on every day. I mean, the big statement right there, I love that it changed. And Tom McMenamin's what it says, he always says be smart. He doesn't say be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely love that because it's the truth. We got to be smart. Safe is kind of in the background, right? We're going to be safe by being confident in our skills, have that just innate ability to do our job because we practice it so much, and that is going to make us safe. So we got to be smart about our skills, smart about what we're doing, smart about how we set up our apparatus, smart about our speed, and we also got to set expectations. And, you know, that is like one of the most difficult things I've seen for departments around here, especially, is like, well, where do we set our expectations? And, you know, we've both been in fools groups. We've both been in training cadres and doing things like that. And you're always like, I'm sure you've heard this before. Oh, well, we gotta train to the lowest common denominator. Have you ever heard that one before, right?
Dude,
so everybody
nails on
here
the chalkboard.
They've already heard that. I'm guaranteeing most people that are listening have heard that before. And I always say, like, that's the wrong direction. And they go, well, what do you mean? I'm like, if you keep training to the lowest common denominator, just like at our department, and this is an example, we don't say that around where I'm at, but if we were to do that, we get new people coming in all the time. So I'm not going to have to keep dropping our standard down to meet the lowest common denominator. And I just tell them, you got to find your standard and train people to it. That's the only way you can make this work. And, you know, back at Beaver Dam, and those guys are fire. They are fire oriented. They want to do the job the best they can. And it was an absolute riot to work there because we did set standards. We were saying, hey, we want to be through the door, masked up within 60 seconds. We want to be forcing this door in that much time. There's always going to be times that'll make that not happen.
Sure.
But we like watching game film. We like taking our helmet cans and, you know, taking a look at what we were doing and being, you know, having realistic conversations about things we didn't do well or did do well. And it just made that crew so much better. And it was such a hoot to work with them because you got this trust. You got this, you know, you have full trust in each other because you train with each other all the time. And we set a standard.
Yeah.
The Misfits set a standard. You know, it was one of those things where it was exciting to do. It was difficult because you had the people throwing stones, but it was an exciting thing. And you have to set a standard. You have to set an expectation for people to reach. And that can be either as an officer for what your people are doing on your fire station to your performance on the fire ground. But if people don't know what expectation to meet, they're just going to float.
Yeah.
And they're going to do whatever's convenient and comfortable for them. I mean, if you're, we talked about before this, if you're in this job for the comfort and not the responsibility, and you're in for time on for the comfort, not the responsibility, you probably shouldn't be here.
Oh yeah. And it's a known thing, man. Like, time on the job seniority doesn't translate to experience at all.
No.
Like, there are plenty of guys on the job that have 20 years on the job and have done their first year over 20 times.
Yes.
They've never sought to be better. They've never sought to get out of their comfort zone, learn, grow, push themselves. And so they're still operating with a very basic level of skill and ability because they never pushed beyond that. Yeah. And like this mindset, like you said, of the lowest common denominator, the problem with that is over time that bar gets lower and lower and lower. And the other thing too is for your high achievers, for your high performers, the guys that want to be pushed to be better, like there's nothing more demoralizing than to see that culture rewarded, to see that mindset rewarded, because your hard charges, they want the hard tasks, they want the hard work, they want people, you know, iron sharpens iron, man. We're talking about it with the conference thing. It's getting around people that push you to be better. And as an organization, if you want to excel, if you really want to excel, and you know, you have to have high standards, you have to raise the bar. And here's the thing, make your minimum, I think Corley Moore says this, make your minimum standard so high that comparatively it is a high standard for everybody else around you. You know what I'm saying? Like your bar is what you set it at. Let's be honest. Like every organization decides where their bar is going to be set.
Yes, they do. And that's one of the, I think that's the biggest thing you have to do as an organization is set that bar and set those expectations for your people to meet. You know, a lot of people in the fire service, I would still say the majority are type A personalities. Mm-hmm. And type A personalities thrive on being challenged. You thrive on being challenged and meeting the next challenge, and then finding a new challenge and meeting that one. And the issue with that is when you have type A personalities that aren't getting challenged, and we talked about this, that passion turns into this just bitter pill of why don't people care as much as I do? Why is this not happening? Why don't they see things from my perspective? And it just makes things go awry. And I was that person. You said you were the same way. Yeah. I had hard lesson to learn. And I can say I did not approach things the right way for my first few years in the fire service, period.
Same.
And that was maybe because I came from a former job that had a lot of high performers. And I was like, well, this should be the same way here. Why don't people care? What's going on? I also had this thought I knew more than I did. So that was the other part about it. But that recalibration and then finding those challenges and then finding the right attitude to go along with it, which was the key. That's where you really started building this great, building that building block for myself, and I think then for the department to grow off of.
Dude, I will say this, and we'll segue into this segment on building a culture of excellence. We're kind of hitting around it. But what it means to build a culture of excellence, how to build a culture of excellence. And I think one of the lessons that, you and I have discussed this before, having understanding that your personal standards should always be higher than, in your own expectations, your own standards should always be the very highest, right? That's your integrity. That's who you are. I understand that you can't expect everybody to be you, to have the same drive, whatever. And that's okay. That's okay. And that's all, it took me a long time to understand that. However, I think it's also okay to have base level of hey, this is what the job entails. You need to be able to perform at ABC level. And here's the thing, constantly be trying to just a little bit at a time help people get better, right? And with this is the conversation we had before about, it's that whole saying 10 pounds of pressure 100% of the time, right? And it really is that, but it's so hard for type A people to do, because a lot of times for us it's all on or all off. It's 100% of the time, and sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. But I will say this, through experience and time, you start to learn hey, how to gently keep that pressure on consistently. Because here's the thing, are we running a sprint or a marathon here? And I think that's what people got to remember is that's great, you go hard, but then like I said, you hit that wall enough times and you almost become cynical. You become, some of your worst detractors in any fire department were one-time hard charges. Some of the worst enemies that fire chiefs have were guys that got beat down so much, and they got cynical, and they got just spiteful, and now they become the thorn in the side. Because, like you said, type A personalities, they need that challenge. They need that direction of focused aggression, where I can put my energies into being really good at it. And when people see that administration does not reward excellence, that they don't reward your hard charges, and they pander to the lowest common denominator, it does break down morale, and it does tear those people down. And a lot of those people either A, check out completely, or B, they become cynical and very bitter towards the organization and want nothing to do with it.
And what we have to realize in that is our sprints come on the fire ground, our marathon comes in the firehouse. And I think that's
a good way to look at it.
Wow, I thought of something cool. Once in my life, every blind squirrel gets a nut sometimes. But it's a fact. We got to sprint on the fire ground, and not meaning running. I'm a fan of moving fast with purpose.
Move with a purpose.
And running if you want. If you're good enough to run. I'm all about that. But sprint on the fire ground and the marathon and the firehouse, because the other key to that, like we talked about, is you're going to have those just solid dudes that maybe don't care about the job as much as you do. But we can look at it again like sports, right? Very rarely do you have a Super Bowl championship team that has a great offense, a great defense, and great special teams, right? Some have great defense. Their offenses, they're pretty good. And their special teams might be terrible, but they win the Super Bowl because the offense, or in that case, the defense carries the team, carries the rest of the team.
Yeah.
But those other elements are still pretty solid.
Sure.
So you can have those guys that absolutely surprise you. When you get super passionate, you start talking to them, and you're like, this guy only cares about, his days off, hunting, and cleaning his car.
Right.
But then all of a sudden you get talking to him, and you're like, that guy's actually a solid fireman.
Yeah.
They just don't show it as much.
Sure.
So we got to be careful sometimes with that too, of being like, don't just relegate them to this corner of, put baby in the corner that they don't care about everything. Because a lot of times you can find those people that really do care. They just don't want to go to conferences all the time.
Sure.
They want to do all that. Then there's the other group though that really just doesn't. They just really don't care about it.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that are very difficult. You gotta find a way to plant a seed in them somehow to make them care about it. Doesn't have to be as much as we do, but you have to make them care. That's the challenge we all have everywhere, I think. But a challenge nonetheless for us. So,
well, I mean, when you're talking about a culture of excellence, right? I think, and I really truly believe this, over the last 18 years of watching this in a couple different departments, you have really three groups of firefighters in any given department. And I know there's analogy to, the mindset of
the owner, the renter, and
I'm trying to think of the way it's broke down, but the way I look at it is like I'm a very simple guy when it comes to this. Like, there's 10% of the department in any department that does all the work. The hard charges, and in that group, there's usually a handful that are like you're really tip of the spear kind of guys, right? And but you got that 10% at the top that's kind of driving the organization, right? And then you have the 10% at the bottom that they probably should not be there. These are the guys that are just they don't want to work. They're dead weight on the organization. They bring the organization down. And by the way, it's where the upper 10% spend 90% of their effort trying to deal with the bottom 10%. But what happens is you have this group in the middle of that it can be swayed in either direction, right? It's that 80% in the middle that we're fighting for. Both sides are fighting for it. You got the detractors on one side and the guys that are trying to be problem solvers and go-getters on the other side, and they're competing and fighting for the 80%. And unfortunately, this is where, a lot of administrations go wrong is they listen, squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing. The guys that are hard charging aren't the ones bitching and moaning all the time. They're the ones putting in the work. And so all administration hears is the guys bitching and moaning, the bottom 10%. And what ends up happening is they pander to that. And what they do is they basically diffuse the guys at the top. Absolutely. And like I said, this is the battle though, is like the guys in the middle, like you said, there's a lot of good firemen that they care about their job. They want to do a good job, that they're not necessarily, looking to be, they're not trying to be like the rock star, all-star guy on the team. They just want to be solid, do their job, but they do care. They want to do a good job. They're good people. They don't necessarily want to go to outside trainings, listen to podcasts. They're not into it like that, but with a little bit of direction, can be really good operators on the fire ground or whatever scene you're running. And I think like that's, and I'll say this, there's nothing wrong with those guys. They're good dudes. And like, to me, hard charges, you got to remember, like, we don't want to lose their trust in us. If you're that guy that's trying to, make positive change, and you're trying to drive the organization to a better place, wherever you're at, whether you're big department, small department, career, volunteer, East Coast, West Coast, it doesn't matter. This problem exists universally across the fire service. But if you're trying to make positive change, you have to use a little tact. And you have to understand, you have, a little bit of you got to use the influence you have carefully. And you can't browbeat people. You can't push the envelope all the time and expect people to be you, because if you do, what ends up happening is you end up burning bridges and damaging relationships and losing credibility, because now you become, even though you're pushing for positive things, you become the squeaky wheel, the guy that's bitching, the guy that's always down and on, this sucks, that sucks, and like I said, you get beat up and you become cynical, and then if you're not careful, you actually do more harm than good. Because you're and listen, I'll raise my hand and tell you, bro, I've been that guy.
Same.
I've been that guy. And I don't ever want to go back to that place, because I realize like it is a marathon when it comes to the collective years of your career. Yes, we should be, like I said, sprint on the fire ground. That's the emergency scene is our time to execute as operators. But the rest of the time is in that softer environment has got to be that marathon mindset of like, look, it's Rome wasn't built in a night. It takes time. And, and here's the other thing too. And I'll turn this back over to you, man, but I'm on a rant here.
So please continue.
Understand this, that people have to know you care about them, like that are invested in, like you have to build that equity in people before you can cross some of those bridges, right? Some of those things like, and here's the thing, it's another thing real quick, is some people, you got to know when to cut your losses. There are some people that are just going to be angry and miserable, and you're wasting your time with them, and that's okay. Just acknowledge that and move on. Don't neglect, if you got 5 guys at your station, right? And you got one guy that just doesn't get it, that don't care to get it, that don't want to be there, you obviously have minimum standards, but as long as they're doing their job, like, leave them alone. Focus on the other 4 that are hungry, that want to learn. Don't like neglect the other 4 people on your shift or your station or whatever, because the one egghead that's giving you problems, like, and I see this all the time where chiefs do, chief administrators do this, unions do this, company officers do this. Guys will spend so much time on that one bad apple that they neglect to feed the rest of the guys that are hungry, that are standing over here,
And I said, that's we talked a little bit about that before we started, but I think that was that was my hardest realization, because like you said, I'll raise my hand. I was that guy 100%. Like, I wanted to complain about everything because I didn't understand why we couldn't get this done. We couldn't change this hose load. We couldn't do that. And you start griping and you end up wasting a lot of time and energy and investment in the wrong places. And what changed it for me finally was, one, getting good officers that I recognized what you truly need in those positions. And one was Wes at Beaver Dam. Like, he was the epitome of showing like care for his people, and showing that he's out there with us during the daytime and investing in us, and then taking care of things for himself later on. And then like Jack McGinnis from Chicago, who's a great friend of mine, recalibrating my brain into, if you're just bitching, you're not actually doing anything about it. You're wasting your breath, and you got to recalibrate that. And finally, when I got into the company officer role, it's like I'm a completely different person, and I've been able to relax more, and I've been able to, invest more in my mind and where I'm trying to take things, but also look at it at a lot broader perspective. Like you said, I've found a far more significant change in the firehouse that I'm at by just showing people I give a shit about them and caring. And I would say that 70% of the fight is just showing people you actually care, not only about what you're trying to change, but about your people. Once you show you care about them, and you care about what's going on at home with them, you care about what, homework they're doing for some class or some course they're taking in the fire service, or about their growth and development, like, they will follow you to the end of the earth. And you have to be legitimate in your words. You have to show them that your expectations of yourself are exactly what you expected them. And they will go to the end of the earth for you. If you don't do that, and all you're doing is griping and bitching all the time, they'll listen or act like they're listening, but they're just watching the clown show. It's entertainment for them. So you got to recalibrate yourself and not be that person. You have to show the drive to care about them. When they see you care about them, they're going to say, all right, he cares about us this much. And he also really cares about this nozzle selection, this hose load. And they're like, when he cares about something, he really cares about something, because I know how he makes me feel. I'm going to listen to this, and I'm going to see what he means when he's talking about this. And that buy-in comes so much sooner if you just show investment in your people and their progress and their career and their life. And that was something that I didn't get to until the last 3 years. Go ahead. I think you've had a kind of a similar experience to that,
Yeah, no, man. You're very similar. I think it's easy to be, all fire all the time. Like, you got to be full tilt, like I said, 100% of pressure, 100% of the time. And in doing so, you fail to, what happens is you alienate people, because you don't take the time to, it's okay. Hey, you know what? Hey, you really like hunting. Let's talk about hunting. Hey, you really love football. Let's talk about it. Because what you're doing is, you show it. If you want people to listen to what you're passionate about, you have to be willing to listen to what other people are passionate about. That's a relationship. Like, that's a human need, is to be heard and to be understood, and to, what I'm saying, like, to find that common thread. And so, like, is leaders, informal or formal, it doesn't matter. You have to take the time to get to know where people are at. And like I said, excellence, here's the thing. Excellence starts in the firehouse. And I will take it a step further. It extends beyond the firehouse into people's personal lives. Into, hey, how you doing? Hey, I know your dad just died. Man, are you okay? Do you need anything? Like, reaching out. Hey, I know your kid, you took off last year because your kid had a big game. How'd the game go? Those are the little investments, right? That's giving a damn about people. And here's the thing. If you give a damn about the job, you should give a damn about people.
And I was just going to say that, right? We just talked about the passion going to outside training. We will go to a conference for 3 days, 3 8-hour days, showing our passion for the craft and mastering the craft. How hard is it to take 5 minutes of your day and send a message to one of your guys or gals, asking how their day is going, or how their 4 days going, or if there's anything they need, if something's going on in their family? Like, that's a huge investment we can do every day, and it doesn't take an 8-hour class, right? And I would venture to say that that's going to take you further, further in your firehouse, doing things like that, than maybe even taking an 8-hour, class somewhere. You got to do both. Oh, thank you, Thomas.
We're doing the old coffee break on the show, man. You're 100%, man. Like, it is one of those things where got a little drop on you there. That's right. Good to the left. So I'm over here trying to burn his leg.
but it's that investment. It's like that 5 minutes can go a really long way of just giving them a call, checking in on them, and seeing how they're doing. And it doesn't take an 8-hour class.
Right.
But at the same token, if you're going to an 8-hour class, take them with you.
Well, dude, yeah, absolutely. How, extend the invitation. You'd be surprised. Someone might come along, and it may just be that one invite that changes their whole trajectory in their career. And I'll say this too, man. The more I look at culture, the more when you're talking about building that culture of excellence, consistency is so important.
Yeah, it is.
Because if you're hot and cold, if you're up and down, and you burn bright for a short time, and then you fizzle out, then you burn bright. Like, it is really hard to be to build credibility if you're not consistent. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the thing. We talk about playing the long game. We talk about looking at the big picture and understanding that it's how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's how you have to approach culture.
Yeah,
because it is a huge elephant in the room.
It is. And we just talked about, like, how do you measure success of a culture? This was a conversation we had last week at the firehouse, and one of the questions, like, well, how do you figure out if you're successful? I said, well, a couple things. I said, if I say we're going to go out and train at 10 a.m. and I don't have to go search for people, they just come out ready to go at 10 a.m., we're doing something right.
Yeah.
2 is if I'm not training and I'm in the firehouse, if everybody's together at the firehouse table, we're doing some activity together, I don't care what it is, we're doing it together, that's another sign. And 3 is, just the performance. If when the alarm sounds, they're all getting to the rig fast, they're all getting ready fast and getting out the door, and they're not piddle puddling around, I think we're doing something good.
Yeah.
And that's a huge measure of the culture right there. Is just a few things like that. Having the attitude is, if we're doing something here, we're doing it together, goes a really, really long way. And it can be something stupid. All right. And Jack and I were just talking about this yesterday. He's like, back in Chicago, some days at our firehouse, we just got really good at brakes. He's like, and he doesn't mean like taking breaks. It was brake jobs on cars.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, we had downtime. We're like, let's just do some brakes today.
Yeah.
But they all did it together, and all of a sudden they all had a wheel off, and they're all changing brakes. And it just built this like camaraderie and that group feel of like, we're all doing this stuff together, no matter what it is. If it's bags on Sunday, if it's a movie night, if it's training, if it's going to a good job together, whatever it may be. And you just develop that culture of, that intimacy. It's a weird way to put it, but it's that intimacy with each other, that you really, really genuinely care about each other. You genuinely care about each other's families. You genuinely care about each other's success.
Yeah.
And, I'll take it back to like the Misfits for a second, because I feel like everybody on that crew really cared about each other. And, we all really wanted to see each other succeed. And frankly, every single one of those guys has now been promoted.
Yeah.
And I think that's a measure of the culture that we created, is we all built each other to this functioning unit that was very high performing. And we could all act individually when we had to, but we were just such a great unit. And I think that's like my goal going forward, is to try and replicate that in some ways, just building that culture of, like you said, asking how the kids are at home and caring about it, like having that deep, engaged conversation. We did 80s at 8, we didn't turn the TV on when we were sitting after dinner. It was all right, 80s music at 8 o'clock, and we were sitting there humming and singing 80s like glam rock songs together, and just created this awesome culture that is something that I thrive for every day and strive for. But
dude, it's like, I get it. There's time for people to have some decompression, like, to themselves. But if your firehouse is like everybody's scattered all the time, and they only come out when they have to, and, are always hiding and not trying to, be together, and like, you got to ask yourself, like, what are you doing? Right. I mean, because that once upon a time, the fire service was, looked at as a family.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the lines, we have almost sterilized this job to the point where the joking doesn't go on in a lot of houses anymore like it used to. It's, and it's a fire station, not a firehouse. And, all these things that I when I came on the job, I mean, we trained together, we worked out together, we cleaned together, we did, inspections together, we, obviously ran calls, we watched movies together, the big games on TV, and whatever. Like, we cooked out, like, man, it was like we did everything as a unit. And my very first captain like instilled in me that sense of like, we are a family, and man, it just stuck with me, and because I didn't realize how good I had it, with that particular crew. Now that wasn't the case across all 3 shifts. It wasn't, but that particular captain made it his point, like, hey, we're a unit, we're tight, and to this day, it's had profound impact on like my expectation of what the firehouse should look like. But he was consistent, he was firm and fair and friendly, as Chief Avila always talks about. The thing is, like, there was times where he had to be, the officer. There was times where, like, hey, this is what it is. But the thing is, he was firm, like you knew where he stood, but he was always fair.
Yep.
He always knew, like you always knew, like whatever was good for you was good for the next guy, was good for the next guy. He's consistent. But what was great about it, the friendly part, right? He'd come in and he didn't hold grudges. If you screwed up, fix the problem, let's move on. He would always ask about family. To always, there's always that personal connection of like, hey, how are you doing? Not like the general, how you doing? Oh, good, and move on. Like, no, seriously, how are you doing? Like, how's your family? How's this going? How's this project? And man, like that just has such a profound impact. And that's, to me, like, if you want to measure a culture, walk in a firehouse. Walk in the firehouse and listen to the way people talk. Look at where they're at. Are they hanging out? Because I can tell you right now, like, healthy cultures, man, there should be some time where guys are hanging out on the app floor, sitting on the bumper. There should the kitchen table, like, what I'm saying, that should be a main central point in your firehouse, and crews that eat together are closer. It's just it's proven, like, over and over. Like, if everybody does their own thing at mealtime and nobody, like, like I said, they only have to be doing what they have to do, and guys are just kind of in their rooms the rest of the day, man, like, you're doing something wrong. Like, culturally, you're doing something wrong. And here, I'll say this too: if you are having a hard time, if you're having a hard time getting hard chargers, if you're having a hard time of if you're seeing people not, those type of personalities don't want to gravitate to your firehouse or to your department or your shift or whatever, you got to do a hard, like, look at yourself and say, hey, what are we doing that, right? What are we doing wrong? Like, what do we, why do certain organizations seem, or shifts, or whatever? Because that's the thing, even within a fire department, there's multiple personalities and shifts and things like that. And, like, why does everybody want to go to to this shift? Why does everybody want to go work with that officer? Why does everybody, those are the things you got to start looking at and say, hey, there's got to be something there. Like, if nobody wants to work with that guy, but everybody wants to work with that guy, why is that? Now, it could be that they, they're taking care of the crew, blah, 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 they train, whatever. Look at the type of people that want to go there. If because there are officers everybody wants to work with, and I say everybody, not everybody, but if you're looking for a free ride, and there are guys on the flip side of that I just want to work with a guy that doesn't make me do anything. But I mean, look at your hard chargers. Look at your guys that are into the job, that are passionate, that are ate up. Look where they want to go, and then look why they want to go there. And those are the things that you got to ask yourself. Because here's the thing: on paper, you can have all the bells and whistles and rubber stamps and notching your belt, feathering your cap. Look at us, we got this, we got that, we got all this stuff. But if operationally and in the firehouse culturally, there's not cohesion, and there's not that spirit of excellence, then you're missing the boat somewhere, right? Something needs to change. There needs to be some investment to fix that, because ultimately, like I said, if you don't push that, you can't expect to have a winning organization if you don't culture and develop a winning culture or mindset in the firehouse, right? If the mindset is, we want to win, if the mindset is the opposite of, like, hey, we're looking for reasons not to engage, we're looking, we're just trying to get through the shift, I'm trying to collect a paycheck, I'm trying to get a pension. Like, if that's the prevailing mindset, then something else, something's wrong, right? And that's, I think, like, again, on paper, you can have all the engines, trucks, new equipment, gear, staffing, all that stuff. None of that equates to excellence.
No, I like to talk about, I am a Wichita junkie now. I absolutely love Wichita.
Those guys are awesome.
They are absolute studs. And I'm just going to bring them up because their culture is exactly what I want in my firehouse.
Sure.
Our firehouse. And what it is they've designed this culture where, one, everybody cares tremendously, but they've had great mentors. And I saw that from the first time I went down there a few years ago. And I've been lucky enough, and blessed enough to ride with Engine 10 and Rescue 2 pretty much every time I go down there. And they have 2 captains at that house that are just phenomenal. And one of them is Captain Gerald Johnson. And just the epitome of who he is as a person. I don't work for him, and he always asks me how things are going at home.
Yeah.
If you ever need anything, take it, give me a call. But above that, we'll be sitting around at the tables outside in the band. They have TVs everywhere because they're going to jump every fire they possibly can, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
But we're sitting there this last trip, and all of a sudden, Captain Johnson just jumps up, and as he's running to the rig, you hear building fire, and then everybody else looks over the TV and it pops up. And him being the senior guy, the captain's the first dude off the couch, just running that rig to get ready. And everybody then is just sprinting to get over there and get on that rig to go to this building fire. And that is the standard he sets as a mentor. And that's what his expectation is.
Yeah.
And that captain on the other ship, Sam Hiddle, I had a terrible time getting down to Wichita this last year. Got stuck in Dallas for 20 hours. And he's like, I'll pick you up from the airport. And Captain Hiddle is just one of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met in my life. Not to mention, we're just one of the best guys. And his son is the same way. But he picks me up from the airport. He goes, hey, JD, we're going to go take a look at something. And what are we doing? We're going to go drive by and look at some forcible entry issues that they have in their first two area. And they're just in that mindset. They're in the job. You look around their firehouse. They have the old chalkboard board with riding assignments, hand painted.
Yeah.
They have all their personal tools in a bin that they can pick from each day, whatever they want to carry.
Yeah.
And they're all taken care of. They get off shift, they take care of their tools. The camaraderie outside the fire station, inside the fire station, dinner time, nobody gets up until Cap says so. Then everybody sprints to do the dishes. It's just such a cool culture. And they have so many good dudes there. I mean, they got Stu, they got Lieutenant Jarvis, they got all these other guys. I could go on forever about the names of people they have there. Hatra, like all these guys that are absolute, just great people to be around. And I wish more people knew about Wichita and the culture they have there, because it's just a phenomenal fire department that has just done it right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But like I said, the big part of that, I think, is their mentorship. And it's a part that we struggle with here in Wisconsin. It's not because we want to, it's just we don't have these people that are going to 3 fires a shift and can pass along that 20 years of going to at least a fire shift to us. And that knowledge base, it just doesn't exist around here.
Right.
So when you're able to find it other places, it's really beneficial.
Sure.
And then take that mentorship back home. And then it's just getting that Marine Corps mindset. From the minute you hit the Marine Corps, you are responsible for somebody else lower than you. And you have to be a mentor to that person that's lower for you. I absolutely hate when you hear people that say, well, a guy that's 2 years on can't mentor anybody. Well, that's absolutely not true. Yeah. Hopefully that 2-year person is out mentoring the probie. Because one, he's probably remembering stuff that I don't remember because it's 10 years since I did that.
Yeah.
So he's able to get those little intricate details that he remembers because he just had to memorize it last year and perform that function last year. And then he takes ownership in that person. And I take ownership in him or her. And that continues all the way up the chain, where you have that ownership and that mentorship all the way down your line. Yeah. And the Marine Corps does the best job in the country in that order, but you can replicate those things.
Sure.
And that builds your culture. Huge.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. I think like at the end of the day, like it's okay to care. It's okay to be firemen and like, give a shit about the job, and like there's so many things like that the little things that boost morale that we talked about earlier about just listen, if it's good for your guys and it doesn't negatively impact the organization, doesn't if it's a non-cost thing, why fight it? Like chiefs, unions, whatever, like why fight something that's going to positively impact the majority of your people? If it's little stuff, man, like I mean, scheduling formats doesn't cost any money. It's just a different format, but it helps your guys out. Leather helmets, and when we talk about that stuff, or better nozzles, guys like, oh, smoothbore, but we have to switch all these nozzles. We're talking about, number one, they cost less money. Yep. They're simpler, less things to go wrong. Like to me, that's a no-brainer. More water, less nozzle, or less nozzle pressure, and lower nozzle pressure. Like it's just, it's a more lethal weapon. Yeah. It's simple in design. It's less likely to fail. It takes actually less work for the pump operator to keep up with. To me, like, those are the simple things, from how we set our rigs up to how we set our gear up to how, like, all the little things that, that don't take, you're specing a new rig out anyway, right?
Yeah.
How hard is it to say, hey, you know what, this makes a little more sense while you're in the build process. Just make it better for your guys. Like, if you're going to spend the money, do it right. If you're gonna, like I said, don't get hung up on stuff that doesn't impact. If someone wants to wear a leather helmet and they're willing to spend their own $1,000 to get it, and it's compliant and it's within date, then why the hell does it matter? I see so many of these things, man. Like, guys, I worked in a department one time that the chief was a real stickler about guys having any kind of personal equipment at all, and I'm talking like hand lights. I'm talking like personal tools, things like that. Like, no, we didn't issue it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, if someone's willing to spend $500 on their own set of irons, let them, esprit de corps, man. You want to talk about esprit de corps? Let them spend it. If they're willing to do it. And like I said, I understand they're to a point, like, hey, I can't afford to pay for a leather helmet for everybody in the department. No big deal. This is your issued helmet. But if you got one that's compliant, like I said, that's a no-brainer. If you got guys that, hey, I prefer to use this tool because it's more effective for me, and they have a safe way to stow it, then by all means, like, let them carry it. To me, like, those are the things that, like, you'd be surprised if you just give your people the tools to be successful and give them the freedom to do so.
Yes.
They'll surprise you. And the thing is, it doesn't cost a lot of money to let people just be firemen.
Yeah. And furthermore, if they're buying their own things, right?
It doesn't cost.
Feel good.
Yeah.
Like, that's a net negative to zero.
Right.
It's all positive. And it comes down to just listen to your line, right? Listen to your line, people.
Yeah.
In the end, like, chiefs and administration have to worry about chiefs and administration stuff. Absolutely. But what I always say, like, who's gonna be pulling the line? Who's gonna be using those tools? Who's gonna make the decisions coming off the apparatus? Who's gonna be using that apparatus?
Mm-hmm.
When you're thinking about designing those apparatus, when you're thinking about buying new tools, listen to those folks, right? Why wouldn't you? They are the ones that are going to be functionally using that equipment. They're going to be the ones that have to make those decisions with what they have.
Yeah.
Why would you not give them every tool to make their lives more manageable, more comfortable, and have them feel the pride of every time they grab that nozzle? They're like, I had a part in getting this here.
Yeah.
And I know everything about this nozzle because I did the research and all that kind of stuff. It will take that performance and that buy-in to a whole new level that I think administration just has so much fear of that sometimes, where they don't realize, like, all you have to do is let the leash go sometimes and let those dogs hunt.
Yeah.
And they will do all the work for you.
Yes.
And it's just one of those things where I hate to bring a witch dog in, but that's what they do, man. They let those guys design those apparatus. They let those people pick their equipment, and you just see it. Yeah. You see it in everything they do. It's just visceral in that department of the buy-in and the attitude moving forward. And it's not hard to do. It's not hard to do at all. They just got to let the dogs run.
Sometimes the best thing to do is give your folks a little latitude and get out of the way.
Exactly.
And that's from chiefs, company officers, like 100%. Don't micromanage. If it doesn't impact affect you, then why even bother fighting it? I mean, if you got 80% of your guys say, hey, we really think that this tool is a better tool and it would help us do our jobs better, and it's not just astronomically different in price, like, why not put that tool in their hand? If and that goes back to, like I said, I mean, the mindset of, like, speccing apparatus. Like, are we speccing these functionally to fight fire, or are we expecting them to do everything else and then fight fire as an afterthought?
Yeah.
It's little stuff like that when people are talking, like, hey, how can we be more operationally effective? And you don't, if you don't listen to that stuff and you think you know better and whatever. I think sometimes you lose, I've seen so many across the country, man, so many chiefs lose buy-in.
Yes.
They lose any kind of sense of esprit de corps because guys just get tired of getting told no.
Yeah.
And I get it. We listen, we all understand there's a time that no has to be said. We don't have the money for that, or hey, we can't do that right now because of XYZ. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But there's things that cost $0 that can be done to improve morale right now. We talk about recruitment and retention all the time. Well, guess what? Culture is one of your biggest recruitment tools, or detractors from recruitment.
100%.
Because at the end of the day, like, your culture gets out, like, the word gets out on who you are.
If you're hiring studs, if you constantly have studs come to your fire department, people are going to want to go to that fire because they know that the passion's there and they know that the
Yes.
culture must be there.
Yes.
You have to maintain it.
Yep.
You have to maintain it. And if you do that, you're gonna have a gold mine. You're gonna have a gold mine of knowledge and a wealth of people that are gonna constantly go out and promote your fire department. I bring up the guys from Spartanburg all the time talking about this, because you go to any conference and you see Spartanburg, Jared Van Eck, and all those guys walking around, and you're like, I want to know these dudes, because they show up to everything. They're passionate about the job, and they want to talk to you about it. And they're just great dudes.
Hey, and you know what? They don't get paid a shit ton of money.
Exactly, right?
And they still love the job.
They still love it.
Weird, right?
Yeah, and I mean, those are the people you want to be around, right? And they just have a blast, and they're a great group to be around. You can build that anywhere.
Yeah.
You can absolutely build that anywhere. You just have to have the right culture in place.
Yeah.
But it takes the people to make that culture.
Sure.
And it takes the administration to recognize what they need to do, either what they need to do or what not to do, to allow that culture to flourish. And you just got to keep one side or the other. Sometimes it's the guys that will do it too, and not administration. You got to keep each other from dousing each other's flame in that sense.
Yep.
And let that grow and let it go. And that's a very hard thing for some people. They want to control it all. They want to, it's dangerous in the society of PR and social media, for something might go wrong if I let these guys go. Sure. Yeah, but there's a lot more that's going to go absolutely right.
Yeah.
There's absolutely a lot more that's going to go right, because they're going to draw in the right people.
Yeah.
They are going to draw in the right people for you that want to work for that fire department. And they take so much ownership in that fire department, they don't want to screw it up for you.
Yeah.
And that's like another measure, both as a company officer and a department. How do you know if you got buy-in? They don't want to make your job harder.
Yeah.
They do everything in their power, and they think about it before they do it, of like, man, if I do this, it's going to be hard on the fire department. It's not going to look good. Or it's going to not look, they will not do that stuff.
Oh, it goes back to those standards and expectations. When you set that bar high and you give people buy-in and ownership, guess what? They know what the bar is.
Yes.
And here's the thing. When people are that bought in, they don't want to screw up, like you said. And they're going to police themselves.
Yes.
Because they understand what's at risk of if they screw it up.
So, I mean, it's just one of those things that we can go around in circles all day trying to discuss how we're going to fix problems, when they're always laid out right in front of us. We always try to make it so much more complicated than it needs to be.
I think a lot of times it's simple, but it's not easy.
Yes.
It's not an easy pill to swallow.
Very, very good point. Yeah. Simple, not easy.
Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
So let me ask you this, shifting gears, we kind of hit on it earlier, but I want to talk about risk management a little bit. Years ago, when the airlines they developed the resource management, that became a big thing. You had some stuff from other fields, law enforcement, work its way into the fire service. You started seeing these initiatives to reduce risk, to find ways to cut down on injuries, line of duty deaths, and there's a lot of merit in those things. I feel like, and I do a class, it's called risk management, not risk aversion. Running Scared is the name of the class. And we take a deep dive into the hard numbers of like line of duty deaths and injuries and what's actually happening. And, my perception is that in a lot of ways, the fire service has gone a step beyond risk management and trying to manage risk through training, preparation, proper equipment, all these things to just trying to avoid it altogether. And in some cases, I get it, but what that is translated to is this almost paralysis on the fire ground. I feel like a lot of times when people are afraid to act and afraid to execute because they're afraid of any kind of risk. And it translates to that. It translates to the way we set our rigs up. We talked about the clean cab stuff earlier. We talk about, the mindset of just like looking for reasons not to go in versus reasons to go in and engage. And I just want to get your thoughts on where we're at, state of the fire service, if you will. Obviously, there's pockets of guys that I feel like get it. They understand, like, there's risk associated with this job. Our job is to train for every possible scenario that we can, so that we minimize that risk but can still execute. But there's a lot of the fire service has bought into this risk averse mindset where like I said, that they bastardized the Everyone Goes Home program and made it made it this thing where you can't take any risk because someone might get hurt. Like I said, I've heard unions across the country fight like, we can't train, it's too hot, it's too cold. We can't do this because someone might get hurt. Chiefs,
fires only happen
Chiefs
cold outside.
Yeah, Chiefs, don't work out in your gear because you might get have a heart attack, or you might have a stroke, or you might get cancer, or don't go lights and sirens anymore because someone might get hurt. All this stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm 100% in support of doing everything we can to avoid people getting hurt or killed. But I think not at the expense of the mission, not at the expense of doing our duties.
Yes.
We swore an oath to serve and protect. And I feel like in some ways we've lost some of that on the job. And I just want to get your thoughts on it.
We're starting to have guys fight back against us. I had to look this up here, but Bill Carey and Dave LeBlanc, Data Not Drama.
Yep.
If you haven't seen that website or read their stuff, you have to go check it out, because they do an extremely good job of laying out what the risk truly is with line of duty deaths, roof ventilation, search, all those kind of things. And they lay it out in a really, really great way. But, we have to have a risk assessment, risk taking mindset, period. And that's my assessment of the whole thing, because we can't go into everything with that risk. Even the risk management thing is kind of a weird way to put it to me.
Yeah.
Because it's always like, well, now I got to think about the management of the situation. Risk assessment, it's a nuance. It's a little difference, but my risk assessment's happening the minute you get dispatched, right? And if you take it as an assessment process constantly, and you're constantly assessing things as you're going along, you're able to assess and make changes based on your assessment. If you're always thinking of a black and white management issue, you're not really assessing everything all the time. You're looking at things in terms of black and white. In my opinion, that assessment gives you that gray.
Yeah.
And greatness isn't made in the black and white, it's usually made in the gray. If you're assessing well, you're able to take the risk that's necessary. And that's more the mindset you want to see people in. And again, it's a nuanced thing. I know it's like one different word.
No, I like it.
That makes sense. Yeah. So that's one thing we try to talk about a lot of, is like, are we assessing our risk like we should all the time? And I think most of the time guys do a pretty good job of that without even thinking about it. We want to make it this deep diving science. Like, oh my gosh, we do this risk management stuff, we're going to be able to take care of all the line of duty deaths and all these issues on the fire ground, when it's just not the case. You can write every policy and procedure you want to write, and people are still going to die. We've talked about this already, right? But if you teach people the core functions of firefighting, you teach them how to assess a building, you teach them building construction, you teach them what smoke looks like, you teach them about how to be quick in a stretch and all that kind of stuff, they're naturally just going to get into that assessment of every piece of those skills. Like we talked about earlier too, the individual skills. We might do 7 or 8 hard skills before we get into a building, but we've been doing 500 to 1,000 basic assessments in that first 30 seconds that we're just ticking through the mind. We teach people to really be really good at stress inoculation and making those assessments and making good decisions and taking good risks based on that assessment. You're going to do so much more for your company, and you're going to do so much more for the people that are working for you. Risk management just seems to water down and make it this flow chart. And we've talked about those many times too, but it makes it into this matrix of things that I'm not going to be thinking about this on the fire ground. Like, you got to be thinking about what your job and task is.
Sure.
So it's one of those things where the data helps, because you can sit there and be like, because I hear it all the time, roof ventilation is stupid. It's actually a great tactic.
Oh yeah.
And people aren't dying on roofs.
No.
This false premise, because people are afraid of doing it. They bring up, and then you're like, it's like 2 people in the last 30 years, and one of them fell off a roof, and and then they're just like, wait a sec. Well, you all said you can't go up on roofs. That is not what they said at all.
No.
They gave you a time frame of when most roofs are going to fail. That's what that study was, and they found it was fairly consistent. It was at 17 to 22 minutes for most roof construction. A fire actually impinging on those structural members is when you're going to get that failure. So you can't let people just do surface. You got to make them dig deep. You got to make them know actually dig deep in the details, and not allow the paper pushers to just take one line out of something and say, well, this is our risk management policy. It doesn't work that way.
No,
it just doesn't work that way. So it can, if you have people that don't care, but if you got people that care, you can't make that stuff up. It's right there in front of us. The
Oh,
stats are out there. So.
I think, yeah, it comes down to is like you got to look at the big picture and understand what the task is and what's actually killing us, what's actually getting. It's not what we think it is a lot of times. We're our own worst enemies, but the media and YouTube and also we like to fear monger. There's a lot of that going on. I want to read this quote from John Paul Jones, the father, dubbed the father of the U.S. Navy. Has a quote that says, "It seems to be a law of nature, inflexible and inexorable, that those who will not risk cannot win."
Absolutely true.
You don't win. You don't have a culture of winning, and you don't win on the fire ground in the emergency scene if there's no risk involved. You have to be willing to take calculated risk, right? I'm not talking about blind aggression. We're talking about purposeful aggression. Assert ourselves in this problem and fix it, right? But there are risks that come with that, and I think like that's what it comes down to. That's the way you describe it is probably I've never heard it described as risk assessment from the standpoint of like when you talk risk management, everybody thinks that's the term, that's the word. I know it's semantics, but I really do like it because it's a subtle shift. In that one word from management to assessment. That's a really good way to look at it.
We're constantly doing it. Right. It goes along with the adage of like people always ask what makes a great fireman, and to me, it's like it's that person that's in the right place at the right time all the time. Like something's happening, you just look up and they're like, "There's Nick.
Yeah,
he's got it.
He's got it."
And those guys and gals are the ones that can make the risk assessment constantly. Their brains are constantly moving in that mindset. Right. I'm looking, I'm computing, I'm doing. And they just find that place to be. That makes a great fireman.
Yeah.
Is they're constantly doing that risk assessment, constantly finding the next place they need to be, and they're putting themselves there.
Yep.
And the risk takers are the ones that are confident enough in their skills and their risk assessment skills to put themselves there because they know they're capable.
Yeah.
And if you don't have those people, your fire ground is never going to go well.
Yeah.
It's the Braveheart moment. That's not really the Braveheart moment where it's just like you get guys so jacked up and they know that's the person they want to follow that they will Colin Powell says it. They follow you just based on curiosity.
Yeah.
It's that, but they also know like this guy knows what he's doing.
Sure.
I'll follow him anywhere.
Competence breeds confidence.
Absolutely, and it's all part of that process.
Yeah.
But the other part about the risk management thing is it's just trying to make a white collar thing.
Yeah.
We want to make these fancy words and matrices and flow charts for things that they just don't exist. Like your brain is so overloaded. Leadership Under Fire does a great job in doing this with the stress of the brain and how your brain works, the hot brain, cold brain thing. Like one of the exercises they have is they put four numbers up on a screen, and then they're saying, all right, repeat this line of letters by adding one number to each one of those four letters from 0 to 9. And all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're going, I just did it. Chief Nuremberg did it to me. I was like, and I'm like, I feel like I'm a fairly smart guy. I just sit there and I'm like, oh crap. But it shows you like how much your brain has to process at any one time. And now you're expecting me to be like, well, in my risk management policy, it says this when I'm looking. It's not going to happen.
Right. That's not
You just need to train these people enough when they're looking like, all right, you got to do this, and this.
Recognize, prime decision making and the OODA loop and all that stuff. And we could spend a whole episode just on that. Man, dude, we're coming up a little over 90 minutes here. We've had an awesome conversation, dude.
Yeah.
It is, man, again, going back to the culture of excellence, why we're here, preparation training, taking a deep dive into really, how we're operating, what are we doing to build the best possible fire company, station, shift, whatever, in our fire departments. Man, I've enjoyed the hell out of it, dude.
Yeah,
it's been a blast. That being said, for the sake of time, we're gonna have to come here. I have to have you back on the show, man. We're having too much fun here. But it's time in the show where we do the rapid fire questions. So 6 questions, kind of rapid fire. We shoot for about 60 seconds an answer. Again, take your time if you need more. But
everybody that knows me is laughing because I talk a lot.
Dude, you are literally preaching to
make it happen.
Yeah. But man, let's hit the old rapid fires, man. Let's do this thing. So question number 1. What is your favorite assignment on the fire ground?
Truck company work, period. Forcible entry ventilation.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one.
Well, probably search, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Search?
I think it's like an overlooked love relationship I have.
Okay.
Just the nuances to it that are overlooked a lot, I think. So
yeah. I can get down with that. All right. What's your Favorite training drill?
Favorite training drill is just a stretch. So just two companies, when one's stretching, the other one's forcing the door, masking up and going through a door. I think that's just like a bread and butter thing.
Yeah.
And just setting it up like that. If you got a forcible entry door, get, two groups of three or two groups of two. You just have one company show up on the engine, start stretching that line while the other one's going up to force the door, and then watch them do that dance around the door.
Yeah.
They got to steal each other's door, whatever it's going to be, and then just get through that door quick.
Yeah, that's good, man. Practice the basics, right?
Basics.
So, all right, question number 3. What is one book every firefighter should read?
Oh man, I like Alone at Dawn. I just think it's a military book, but I think it's just fantastic. I'm getting into Rothmeyer's book right now, Mastering the Craft, and it's phenomenal. I think that's one of those new books. I'm going to give a few. So I'll go fire service, non-fire service.
Sure.
Mastering the Craft. I like Coordinating Ventilation by Nick Papa. I think he did just a great job explaining everything in there. First and Last Out, great book. There's a couple of other books, but then Alone at Dawn for non-fire service. I'm reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius for my leadership under fire class, and I think there's just such great little quotes in there that really will help you guide your life a little bit more. And those are the ones and then Left of Bang. I think that's another great book.
Yeah, I have to check that one out.
Yeah.
So I think you already answered this question, but I know what you're assigned to, so I'm going to ask it anyway. Engine or truck?
Truck.
Yeah.
I have an engine right now in my house, so that's one thing. But I love truck work. I absolutely love engine work too. I just feel like I feel like you learn a lot by not being tied to a hose line.
Sure.
And that's a really exciting place to be. Gives you a little bit more attitude and you go hide from the chief a little better. No.
we can disagree. So
that's right. Yep.
Just kidding.
A little fighter monkey here. So
yeah. All right. So what's one piece of advice you would give to new firefighters entering the service?
Oh, don't be me in my first few years. That's one. I think it's true. Like, I think, you got to make a self-assessment, and it took me some years to do that. So I think biggest advice is always be a mentor and know who you're going to be mentoring, and always know who's showing up to your fires, always know who's watching you. Which is the public. It's people in the firehouse, but it's your kids. It's your family is another one. And you got to pay attention to that. But be introspective, reflect on everything, dig deeper than you want to deep in yourself, and make an honest, true, assessment of where you're at. And I think the sooner you're able to do that, the sooner you're going to save yourself. Because I think everybody comes into the fire service with this idea they know more than they do. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yeah.
The competency doesn't quite meet the confidence. The sooner you do that, the sooner you're able to really open yourself up to other people and what they're teaching you. And mine was just traveling. Mine, because it's kind of a training hole in Wisconsin. Sometimes you don't have it. Then the minute you started traveling out and learning how much these people know, and you're like, I know absolutely zero. The sooner I was able to recollect my thoughts and get a different perspective of, like, I know nothing. And even to this day, you sit there and look and you're like, man, I probably only know 10% of what I really wish I knew. Even though some people are looking to you like, hey, can you teach me this? And you're sitting there going, I don't know as much as I want to, and I don't think I ever will. That'd be my advice.
That's solid.
Just trying to find that introspective view of yourself and being honest with it.
Yeah, no, that's solid advice, man. Really, honestly, well put. So last question: what do you see as the biggest problem facing the fire service today?
Oh man, lack of fires. Can that be it?
Yeah, dude, I like it.
Always get more. I think that's one thing, but I do think it's like that lack of mentorship. I feel like if you have a good mentor starting off, the sky's the limit. And if everybody took that mentorship seriously, everybody on the job, you would have just the most kick-ass fire department you could ever imagine. So I think mentorship and just that passing of knowledge, I'm going to try and start this new thing down where I'm at of having all the guys that are retiring write down in a book, like 10 things, the Home Depot pro tips from the fire service. And we've seen it a couple of times, Oshkosh started doing something. But just to maintain that ownership and what's come before us, but allowing those individuals that have so much, and sometimes aren't the guys that come out into the floor to teach you something, but just drop those little 10 things that are going to help the future out. And even though they might not be the guys that come out on the floor with you and train, they can provide something. They have
Some
that bit of
insight.
knowledge that
Yeah.
can really help you build. So I think that mentorship is just the number one. If you can get that instilled in your firehouse, you're going to do really good things. So
I like it. Yeah, no, 100%, man. So that's all the questions I got, dude. Well put
this is
answers.
fun. This is a
Well
blast.
put. So hopefully, you know, folks listen to it. I think gonna get a lot out of this today. I know I'm fired up, man. Every time we talk, dude, you know, just such a good conversation with you, man. So thanks for spending some time on the podcast today. Thank you for sharing your passion and insight into the job, man. And like I said, just you know, proud of what you're doing, man. You're doing good stuff, and it's always good to see other guys excelling in the fire service and kicking ass in life. So
we got good things coming in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So we're getting here.
Yeah, Wisconsin is there's definitely a swell happening, and I love it. So
Awesome.
JD, thanks for coming on the show today, man. We'll get this thing pumped out here later this afternoon, this evening sometime, and to the masses to consume, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Sounds great.
So all right, brother.